Patrick and I met through the networking group BOM. I identified that he could be a good fit for where I was at with my business. The main objective with Patrick was to bring together a decision that we'd already made with my wife, which was to move the family to St. Augustine, Florida. And how does my role work in that scenario, a remote office, president working away. And then in that process, it became clear that what I had envisaged as my role was really not the ideal role for me, and that there was a time to redefine the long-term plan for the company and what I was going to be doing versus what, say, a president might do with the company. So it really, the goals evolved once I got to know Patrick, if that makes sense. The real goal was to help me figure this out. I'm trying to do something I've never done before, and as we were doing it, he helped me see things that I wasn't seeing, and that in itself to find new goals. What I was trying to do was to work within the constraints of what I knew, and with Patrick, what we achieved was through a series of conversation, very challenging questions and profiling tools, to have a much healthier perspective of what my goals were, which I wasn't 100% sure of myself, family, financial, business, but also, what do I enjoy doing, what am I not good at, what's getting in the way of the company growth. The major result of our engagement was accelerating my exit from a day-to-day management of the company, almost being given the liberty without guilt to say it's okay to have someone else run something that you've always run and started and try and do something else. However, that's good. You need to manage that process very carefully and know all the players involved and have realistic expectations. And that's what the major takeaway there was realizing how delicate that process is, but that with a clear idea of where you want to get to, it's actually a very enjoyable process. As the business grew and it was meeting my financial needs, I developed some bad habits of selective control. Things that I like to control and things I like to ignore. Yeah, that doesn't necessarily reflect their importance to the company, it's just what I like to do. And I think the end result was a much healthier view of what the end game is, what my role is going to be in Florida, what the growth opportunities are for the company short term and long term, how me getting out of there is going to help other people flourish. And doing that, I was much more comfortable with the idea of letting go. Having said that, I still need coaching on an ongoing basis to not, stop touching things. When you start a business, you get so used to overcoming obstacles and things going wrong, and financially, marketing, people, whatever it would be, you'd overcome it. So that you develop a determination, which is the other side of being a little bit rigid and convinced that you know the right answers. So you become a little hardened and inflexible. And I think I had reached that stage, and as such, I was just not seeing what needed to get done half the time. You realize you keep talking about the same problems, but they don't get solved. So you realize you have the same conversation with your wife, with your brother, with whoever. You say, that idiot or this client or that problem, and it never seems to go away. But I'm the only constant in that picture. So at some point you say, maybe it isn't the world, maybe it's me. There was a path for Leo, which was moving away from an entrepreneur that was running a business that was somewhat stuck - bored. I was very much into changing things to change shape, and in an organization that's growing, that's a terrible thing, because we need to execute, we need to be consistent, we need to have clear leadership, and that totally is not how my brain works. So I was getting in the way. So once we realized that, the next question was, well, how do you do that? So yes, Leo wants to do something else. He sees it's better for the company and for him to do so. That's good for him. What about everybody else? And in doing so, what I think we realized is that my weakness was very much in people management, and therefore understanding their weaknesses, their strengths, putting them in the right position, calling people out when they're not performing. I had not done a good job with that, so Patrick came in and gave a fresh perspective, an objective perspective on some of the key players, and said, this is what you can expect from them, this is what you can't, they're just not wired that way. So the big part in the first stage was why I needed Patrick to get engaged with complex languages, was to manage my expectations on the transition side of things. So I didn't have crazy expectations of what I thought people should be able to do, based on what I wanted them to be able to do, rather than what they were able to do themselves. Well, that was a great success. We hadn't done that before in that format, and I think people came to it sort of excited that they were going to do something, didn't know what it was, and it was a day where we had to pack a lot in. You know, the decision for me to move to Florida and sort of be hands-off as of January the 1st had not been communicated yet, so that was going to be the core communication part. But what Patrick did very well was build up and contextualize that so that they didn't feel threatened or afraid of it. And what he did there was several exercises that allowed them to be heard, which I think was super important. Everybody walked away saying, I was able to express my opinions and I've been heard. And secondly, he really illustrated the blind spot that all of us have as to the power of teamwork. You know, so there was one exercise we did, and to this day, no one in the company will doubt that smart people not working together equals less than a reason to be working together.
And so what did you notice in the outcomes of the staff as a result of the retreat?
Well, first of all, they wanted another one, and that was a healthy sign. I think they really wanted to continue, and the buy-in to the company's values and a willingness to continue this initial exploration of who we are as a company and take it to the more granular level as what does it actually mean on a day-to-day basis for individuals in the company. They owned that. People wanted to do that, and it wasn't a senior management telling you how you should behave. It was a conversion from an idea to, this is my company now, not just Leo's company. But it was based very much on our perception of their new role that they were going to have, and any old issues that I had not maybe dealt with, that were sort of festering, that needed to be cleared out first before we could really tackle some new stuff. And I think that realization was critical to having any kind of transition plan, is recognizing that some people feel something that they were owed or that wasn't dealt with. My nature is to skip past that and continue. And I think what they needed to have is someone to sit down and say, okay, how are we going to deal with this? Let's recognize it, let's deal with it, put it to bed, and now no more excuses, no more baggage. Let's kind of run at the new challenge as well. We're going through a transition. There's a lot of change, and in our organization, as a translation company, we have a lot of excellent executors, very process-driven, quality-focused, detail-oriented people, who by definition are not as crazy about change as some other profile types. Despite that, I think the ownership of the future, the leadership that President Gary brought to it from day one, and the buy-in that some of the key people have come forward with, is evidence that they have been heard, they have engaged, and they've been given more responsibility than they had. Now the question is whether they like that responsibility in the future. But today, I believe that they really do appreciate the opportunity given. The strategic planning that we did really was as much an exercise in strategic planning as it was in building a new team. And one of the first questions he asked me, and was, there's two ways you can go here. You can figure out the strategy, which is you can do that. It's your company, and tell them it's my strategy, and go execute. And they will, to a certain degree. Or you can have them develop their strategy with some guidelines that they own and then execute. So it's sort of that leading question, which one would you prefer? And I go, the right answer is the second one. And I think the value to that has been tremendous. I think at two levels. One, I've had to learn to let go, and they've been given the freedom and the responsibility to own it and do something with that. So the reason for doing that was to build a team, especially the senior management team, and quite frankly, I'd rather their plan be well executed because they own it than my plan, which may even be better, who knows, I doubt it, but it might be be executed less well because it's really not theirs. They're just trying to gauge what I want them to do. But today we had a great coaching session where we literally went through the coaching role of, one thing is for me to ask, how does a VP of ops become a president? What does he have to do? The real question is, what does a president have to do to become an owner? And in going through this process with the strategy, and having to let go, it's as much about training me to let go and become something else. And when I say letting go, I'm not saying letting go of the company. I'm saying my role is now managing an asset, so my time frame goes to 3 to 5 years. So I'm start looking at long-term strategy. Short-term, year-to-year strategy is therefore left in the hands of the team. So there was a somewhat of a symbiotic relationship there. I think it is a work in progress, and the way we move it forward is keeping our eyes on the next step. So in my case, it's middle of next year, we're going to do a deep dive on the long-term strategy once the team is in place and they've worked. So I'm not obsessing right now about what's going to happen for the long term. 12 months, 10 to 12 months, let's get some stability, let's get people used to their new roles, let's get some performance, and then let's sit down and do a long-term evaluation. So that's keeping your eye on that next step helps move the ball forward and stops us getting stuck in the letting go phase. Because I'm thinking about now, what am I going to do in next year to fulfill my role in this company? I think Patrick doesn't let go of something that he believes in has not yet been addressed. So he's pretty tenacious in that, and he doesn't mind asking me the questions that I think some consultant might be afraid of. Because they once you start looking at motivations, what your goals, and you start laying out what you think you should be striving for, there's a lot of areas where there's a value judgment. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And he's very challenging in that. Why are you doing that? Are you sure that's the right way to look at it? So I feel he's very, very insightful at an individual level, and he doesn't mind going down the uncomfortable roads. I had already decided how I was going to do things. I was going to go to St. Augustine, I was going to open a second office, I was going to test sales generation, I had all this stuff in my head, I'd do stuff remotely, travel back and forth. That was already done and dusted, that was clear as a bell for me. And he just said, no, you've got a very limited view of who and what the company can do and what you can do. And so he brings a broadening of the options to the table. And what we've done in this transitional process is you've replaced a president who was very numbers focused, which is me, with a president who's a very good people manager. And I believe that despite the transition, the insecurity of what's going on, and quite a few younger people in the company, we've transitioned to a more listening culture and a culture that communicates far better what is expected of you, which we used to do. He has connected dots that I may not have seen. But I think that the deeper thinking part is the most interesting challenge for me, because there is a limit to how fast you want to go in terms of going deeper. But I do believe the deeper you go, the more options open up to you. So the more you recognize that you don't really know what your passion is, or you don't really know what your goals are, well, that's a point of realization. It's not everybody that would be comfortable going that route. It's an uncomfortable journey, but it's a very healthy journey. I believe that what helped me was not so much a philosophical approach of I really should be a better thinker, a broader thinker. It really was more a question of A, where the heck are you going? And B, you are limiting your view of how much the company can grow because of how you see the world. So it can still be an action-based, results-driven sort of conversation, but it's just reframing and identifying how an individual's profile and experience is helping, but also preventing certain things from happening. So an example, it would be in my case, I love marketing. I've done a lot of branding in the past and worked with international branding companies and different jobs I've had. But I have a very narrow view of marketing. Very sort of, it's my way or the highway, and I love what I do, and it motivates people. It's great. Patrick will challenge me, and it'll take a couple of conversations before I really even listen. That's the wrong way to look at marketing from compass language point of view. So I think connecting those dots of my profile, who am I, what are my blind spots, what does the company need, what are the profiles of the individuals that he's looked at, where are we going as a company. Now, if you rearrange those dots, you see very quickly that this one issue here, is preventing the optimal from taking place. So he very much encouraged me to say, as an owner, you've got to look at everything as an asset. As long as the combined takes care of your financial needs right now, your job is to start looking at each one separately. Ask yourself, are you making the assets sweat and grow in a healthy long-term way? Or are you just ignoring these guys and overly emphasizing one of them, which is compass languages? And I think that was a very healthy insight as an owner. So I believe Patrick has helped call a spade and call people out on that. So, you know what, your profile says this, you've been doing that, I think you're doing this, how about it? Yeah, but I want to do that because it makes me feel important. Well, that's good for you, but it's not good for the company.